Presented by Mark, this investigation pulls back the curtain on another deeply disturbing tragedy. The fatal collision of Deborah North and Taylor Meyer began innocuously enough through overlapping social circles in southern Indiana. They were merely two restless souls forging their paths, blindly hurtling toward an unseen, dark horizon. An alumna of the 2006 class at Jeffersonville High School, Deborah chased a lifelong ambition in healthcare. It was a grueling vocation that perfectly mirrored her inherent psychological compulsion to heal the broken. Drawn inextricably to the vulnerable, the medical field offered a profound channel for her deep-seated empathy. The connection incubated gradually, simmering beneath the surface while the pair prioritized their respective worldly ambitions. To secure her nursing degree, she relentlessly navigated academic stints across Indiana University Southeast, University of Louisville, and Ivy Tech. This exhausting academic hustle laid bare the obsessive drive that would ultimately define her fleeting existence. Failure was never an option. She methodically leveraged several institutions to forge an unbreakable foundation for her medical career. With the quiet passage of time, the psychological tether connecting Deborah and Taylor tightened significantly. The illusion of perfect compatibility emerged as they unearthed a mutual, desperate craving for a picturesque domestic life. Late-night whispers consistently echoed with intoxicating fantasies of matrimony and children. They envisioned an impenetrable sanctuary rooted deeply in adoration and unwavering loyalty. Taylor expertly projected the image of a fiercely loyal protector, a flawless facade that perfectly fed her domestic ideals. Acquaintances recalled a magnetic aura surrounding her, an intoxicating cocktail of boisterous humor, radiant warmth, and fierce dedication. She operated with unyielding defiance and a blinding vitality. Never conforming, she relentlessly pursued outdoor escapades, traversing mountain slopes, basking beside waters, and hunting for adrenaline on secluded paths. Such fierce independence rendered her utterly captivating, acting as a beacon for Taylor, who appeared mesmerized by her formidable spirit. From a distance, they projected the flawless optical illusion of an intensely passionate, deeply intertwined union. Radiating an intoxicating optimism, the pair easily convinced onlookers that they had successfully secured their ultimate romantic destiny. Spectators were absolutely convinced of their profound devotion, while an oblivious inner circle blindly celebrated the couple's impending march toward eternity. The organic metamorphosis from platonic acquaintances to ardent lovers felt flawlessly scripted to every trusting witness. By November 2021, the pair formalized their dangerous entanglement with a cinematic wedding, sealing a supposedly blissful fate. Beneath the ceremonial euphoria, legally binding vows were sworn, officially locking the two entities together in holy matrimony. This matrimonial event functioned as far more than mere romantic pageantry. It symbolized the rigid architectural blueprint for a seemingly perfect domestic empire within Jeffersonville, Indiana. In the immediate aftermath of the nuptials, she aggressively channeled her manic energy into domesticity and clinical duties. Driven by a primal craving for motherhood, she forcefully willed her first infant into existence back in 2020. The chronological data undeniably indicates conception occurred long prior to their legally binding exchange of vows. Such preemptive family planning proved entirely standard for long-term partners operating under an unshakable illusion of permanent stability. The infant's arrival injected a blinding euphoria into the home, momentarily solidifying the couple's fractured reality. Enduring the psychological exhaustion of early parenthood appeared, on the surface, to forge an indestructible romantic alliance. Subsequent births quickly followed in 2022 and 2023. This aggressive procreation stemmed entirely from her obsessive psychological need to manifest the sprawling, idyllic household of her youth. Amidst this chaotic biological expansion, her clinical trajectory skyrocketed as she obsessively poured her remaining emotional reserves into patient recovery. Over 15 grueling years, Wellstone Regional Hospital honored her with the prestigious Daisy Award and a lucrative managerial promotion. This specific accolade remains a rare badge of honor, reserved exclusively for medical personnel exhibiting unparalleled psychological empathy. It provided undeniable proof of her clinical precision and fierce protective instincts. Surviving staff members at the Jeffersonville facility of Wellstone Regional Hospital reported profound psychological trauma following her sudden, violent erasure. Corporate executives released a sterile briefing, mourning the newly elevated supervisor and noting that her absence would leave an unfillable void. Ascending to an administrative role validated her commanding presence, proving an uncanny mastery over both medical science and human behavior. Armed with lethal competence, she possessed a preternatural ability to guide fragile individuals through their darkest physical traumas. Within the hospital corridors, her clinical prowess was legendary. Year after year, she cultivated a legacy defined by profound empathy and precision. Juggling high-stakes medical work with raising 3 kids showcased an almost unnatural efficiency. Yet, beneath the ambition, her maternal instincts were both fierce and fiercely absolute. She poured every ounce of spirit into shaping those 3 young lives. Outsiders easily noticed her effortless transition into the matriarchal role. For her, raising a family was not merely duty, it was her ultimate anchor. The meticulous attention she gave patients mirrored the intense devotion she offered her own offspring. But behind closed doors, as their family expanded, the picture-perfect suburban illusion was quietly fracturing. The sheer pressure of managing 3 kids, compounded by dual high-pressure careers, slowly eroded their foundation. The unbreakable bond they once projected was secretly buckling under the weight of daily life. A dark undercurrent took hold. Taylor's festering paranoia regarding his wife's social circles and clinical network. Her steady climb up the medical ladder into a managerial role meant longer hours, inevitably forging tight-knit bonds with the medical staff. This triggered a simmering resentment in Taylor, especially toward the men sharing her workspace. His spiraling jealousy was rooted in a profound psychological fragility, demons he adamantly refused to confront. Mundane workplace chats mutated in his mind, morphing into perceived betrayals and threats. Soon, this toxic delusion dictated his every waking moment. Desperate to extinguish the fire, she constantly defended her fidelity, insisting her hospital ties remained strictly business. The psychological tension escalated drastically when his obsession locked onto a single target at work. He fixated on a device contact ominously labeled as "my best friend Emily." Whether a complete fabrication or misunderstood detail, this entry became the epicenter of his madness. In his warped reality, this colleague was an active predator, dismantling his home, remaining completely deaf to his wife's exhausted, logical explanations of workplace boundaries. The affectionate partner vanished entirely, quickly replaced by a cold, suffocating, and incredibly possessive warden. Every step she took was monitored, every conversation subjected to relentless, paranoid interrogation about her whereabouts. Their sanctuary morphed into an invisible cage, cultivating an environment that suffocated a woman who had always anchored her life on absolute transparency. Navigating a hostile home, raising a trio of kids, and running a medical unit simultaneously began dragging her under. She was bleeding energy, pacifying a delusional husband while desperately trying to keep her family and demanding medical career afloat. The psychological toll of soothing his demons alongside her daily grind became utterly unsustainable. Simultaneously, his grip on reality and basic paternal duties began to slip away completely. He ghosted his own household, vanishing into isolation rather than stepping up as a parent or pulling his domestic weight. This chilling pattern left her functioning as a solo parent, drowning in an impossible domestic balancing act. She confronted him about abandoning the family completely, choosing to drown himself in relentless digital gaming. Digital records captured her desperation, begging for a true partner to help shoulder the parenting load. Unearthed long after the nightmare concluded, this communication exposed the profound agony she felt watching him choose a virtual existence over his flesh and blood family and marital duties. The glowing screen in the dark house became an explosive catalyst. While she pulled grueling medical shifts and nurtured their 3 vulnerable kids at home, he was completely absorbed by pixelated fantasies, actively avoiding the harsh realities of their life. This massive chasm left her functioning as a married single mother, drowning under monumental expectations alone. Spooked by his erratic detachment, she quietly started sounding the alarm to her trusted inner circle. She confessed the bone-deep fatigue of carrying a high-stakes career and a crumbling household all by herself. Managing 3 children was draining. "If I have to navigate this alone, just tell me, and I will forge my own path," the text from Deborah read. Those words laid bare a profound despair, signaling her grim epiphany that the union was a fractured illusion, far from an equal alliance. It was a plea for transparency, demanding Taylor reveal his true loyalty to the household, allowing her to chart a course for what lay ahead. That readiness to bear the burden solo showcased a quiet resilience, driven entirely by a fierce protective instinct over her kids. Even as an icy chasm widened between the couple and Taylor's actions grew increasingly alarming, Deborah anchored herself to the marital vows, fiercely resolute in salvaging the fractured union. Her devotion manifested as a stubborn refusal to abandon Taylor, standing resolute through the gathering storm of their domestic life. She clung to the conviction that the relationship possessed inherent value, believing they could still navigate the darkness side by side. In December 2023, over 12 months prior to the impending nightmare, Deborah bravely faced Taylor, laying out her dark suspicions of his betrayal. That exchange exposed the severe rot within the union, underscoring her mounting dread over his erratic actions and fading loyalty. The tense standoff erupted with raw emotion. She articulated a profound sense of treachery, while he retreated behind walls of denial and cold indifference. Deborah Meyer further alleged that her spouse maintained ongoing contact with a mistress, even rendezvousing right before posing for holiday family portraits. Based on the digital correspondence, these claims indicated she possessed tangible proof of his deceit and aimed to force a reckoning within the confines of their home. The calculated timing of those secret encounters, especially preceding holiday snapshots, struck a uniquely cruel nerve, standing as a blatant desecration of the household's sacred, intimate milestones. Unearthing the suspected affair injected lethal venom into a bond that was already crumbling under pressure. She stared down a chilling truth. The individual she wed and established a life alongside was likely a stranger, wearing a devoted husband's mask. Such a realization acts as a psychological wrecking ball for a woman who poured her entire soul into the household. Amidst this hidden domestic turmoil, she maintained a flawless facade, thriving within her career. While the shadows lengthened across her private sphere, her capacity to uphold elite professional performance, juggling severe marital decay, and 3 toddlers, highlighted an almost superhuman level of grit. Co-workers recalled a fiercely competent individual who injected profound empathy into the daily grind, masking the sheer psychological torment she endured away from the office. Acknowledging the fatal trajectory of the union, Deborah and Taylor booked a couples therapy appointment for February 17, 2025. The move signaled her lingering optimism that clinical mediation and raw truth could somehow resurrect the dying partnership. She remained prepared to pour energy into the void, desperately trying to stitch together the shredded fabric of their mutual faith. The very act of securing clinical guidance proved that deep down, both parties grasped the terminal state of their domestic affairs. To the embattled wife, it served as one final attempt to rescue the life she had painstakingly constructed. Exposing her deepest wounds, she gambled on radical transparency, praying it might illuminate a shared path out of the dark. Yet, as the appointment loomed closer, a toxic brew of envy and dark paranoia began consuming his mind entirely. By January 2025, the delusions peaked. He alleged the existence of an image showing her clutching a male colleague's hand inside a southern Indiana gambling hall. That elusive snapshot, fabricated or grossly distorted, morphed into an all-consuming fixation, stoking a terrifying fury over perceived treachery. His twisted narrative of the picture hijacked his psyche, pushing his actions from merely jealous to dangerously erratic. A dark conviction took root. She was aggressively chasing a clandestine affair with the associate, plotting a covert escape that would abandon the family entirely. The anxiety festered into madness as he obsessed over the so-called proof, convinced she was executing a calculated demolition of their home. The snapshot in question, assuming it was even real, likely captured nothing sinister, merely office peers at a corporate event or associates marking a casual milestone. Still, blinded by an extreme pathology, he twisted every mundane interaction she had with men into ironclad proof of adultery. His total failure to anchor himself to reality or seek healthy dialogue engineered a lethal atmosphere, setting the stage for outright horror. Nearing February 14, 2025, Taylor initiated what he considered a final, desperate operation to salvage their crumbling union. He engineered a heavily staged night, calculating it might miraculously reignite his fractured bond with Deborah. The holiday arrangement featured a carefully constructed Parisian motif, an illusion he felt certain would highlight his unwavering dedication. To set the scene, Taylor acquired a fresh outfit for Deborah and arranged takeout from Kansai, a Japanese establishment he assumed would appease her. He even weaponized their 3 kids for the setup, instructing them to sketch Eiffel Tower images to plaster across the residence. Dragging the little ones into the design process highlighted his obsessive drive to force a picture-perfect domestic facade. Meyer presented his spouse with a carefully penned personal greeting card. The pair allegedly shared a dance to their nuptial track, according to his police statements. Such calculated moves underscored his psychological read on Deborah, tapping deep into their shared past. Swaying to that specific melody carried heavy symbolism, a transparent bid to resurrect the joy they previously harbored. He subsequently informed detectives that this operation was his ultimate, exhausting push to prove his adoration and salvage the wreckage. That admission laid bare a toxic cocktail of sheer panic and escalating resentment toward her apparent lack of gratitude. The delusion that one choreographed night might erase years of rot highlighted a severe disconnect from the reality of repairing shattered trust. As dusk fell on February 14, 2025, Taylor unveiled his elaborate holiday trap to Deborah, banking heavily on a specific, enthusiastic reaction. Yet, when her demeanor remained chillingly flat, he immediately twisted her silence into undeniable proof of her emotional checkout. She just did not care at all, he would later tell detectives. A dark irritation took root as she sat detached over the meal, simmering into fury as the clock ticked. Her muted behavior was likely the byproduct of carrying the crushing weight of domestic decay, sheer burnout from juggling a career alongside 3 toddlers, or the harsh truth that flowers cannot bandage a hemorrhaging partnership. It was a disposition forged by endless months of heavy hostility, deep-seated suspicion, and the icy void defining their life together. The fragile peace shattered completely once a vicious verbal dispute ignited over the cleared plates. He launched accusations of utter ingratitude, ruthlessly interrogating her loyalty to the family unit. The atmosphere grew suffocating, prompting her to attempt a brief escape just to de-escalate the madness. Slipping behind the wheel of her Ford Explorer, she accelerated away from the property, desperate for breathing room. Her exit only poured gasoline on his rage, warping his perspective through a filter of absolute, obsessive paranoia. His mind fabricated a twisted narrative where she was rushing off to rendezvous with a suspected illicit lover, linking her sudden retreat perfectly to the exact hour he guessed the colleague clocked out, taking off the second your other guy finishes his shift. Highly suspicious timing, Taylor remembered sneering at her. Roughly 20 minutes passed before she returned, finding him lying in wait, his jealousy pushed to the brink. While she stepped into the washroom, Taylor quietly hijacked her digital timepiece, clawing through notifications in a frantic hunt for a smoking gun. Every boundary had been crossed. His actions morphed into those of a predatory warden as pure envy devoured logic, catching him red-handed digging through her private digital life. Deborah stood her ground against the glaring intrusion. In response, he brazenly ordered her to surrender her mobile device for a full interrogation. The moment she denied him access to the screen, the verbal standoff mutated into a brutal encounter, setting the stage for an irreversible tragedy. Words gave way to a violent grappling match when he lunged to rip the device straight from her grip. Fighting back, she managed to strike him across the jaw, yet his sheer size ultimately won out as he pried the object loose. Reminding her of his superior physical dominance as he secured the prize, he laid bare the sinister undercurrent of brute force governing their household. Clenching the stolen electronics tightly in his fist, he clamped his hands around her throat while she begged for mercy. "What are you going to do? Kill me? You're going to hurt me and leave our kids with no parents?" she gasped in sheer panic. "You're going to end up hurting me, leaving our kids without parents." It was a desperate plea from a terrified mother, deeply anxious for the 3 little ones asleep on the second floor. The domestic dispute escalated rapidly, prompting Deborah to strike Taylor with a water bottle in a futile act of self-defense. That desperate resistance only fueled his fury. Taylor snatched a heavy wine bottle, bludgeoning her skull relentlessly until everything went dark. She collapsed onto the floor, completely unresponsive, but the violence was far from over. Deborah lay incapacitated, yet the blinding rage inside her husband demanded more blood. Stepping over his motionless wife, he marched to the kitchen and grabbed what he would later call a massive, lengthy carving knife. Gripping the deadly blade, he circled back to his defenseless wife, plunging the steel into her chest and torso with calculated ferocity. It was a prolonged, butchering frenzy. Taylor drove the knife into her more than 40 times, right there on the bedroom floor. Crimson painted the room in horrifying patterns. He kept striking long after any human body could have endured the trauma. For the seasoned detectives who eventually processed the room, the sheer magnitude of the carnage was profoundly unsettling. Standing over the aftermath, Taylor picked up his dead wife's phone and snapped a crude picture of her mangled corpse. Court documents reveal he forwarded that macabre image to a contact saved as my best friend Emily, adding two chilling words: "Your fault." He brazenly admitted to investigators that his explicit goal was to inflict severe psychological trauma. Sending the image was a calculated act of malice, designed to shift the guilt of his wife's slaughter onto someone he believed ruined their marriage. It showcased a fractured psyche, a man entirely disconnected from reality, refusing to own the monstrous choices he just made. Through his twisted lens, this execution was never his fault. It was simply the unavoidable fallout of her perceived disloyalty. The digital terror continued as Taylor methodically texted her loved ones, casually announcing the murder. Legal filings outline how he blasted a morbid confession straight to her inner circle. Dropping these confessions into standard group chats instantly plunged her relatives into a living nightmare. Yet, as he orchestrated this digital nightmare, the couple's 3 kids were still slumbering peacefully upstairs, completely blind to the fact that their mother was gone and their father was the executioner. Authorities later recovered the 3 toddlers, all under 5, unharmed. Knowing those tiny innocents were just rooms away from a literal bloodbath cast an even darker shadow over the entire tragedy. One of her close companions, horrified by the sinister texts, realized the absolute peril and dialed the Jeffersonville Police Department immediately. Refusing to wait idly, the confidant rushed straight to the Meyer residence to intercept law enforcement, showing a flash of sheer courage that likely stopped a bad night from becoming catastrophically worse. Just as they pulled up and intercepted the first patrol cars on site, the gruesome photo from the victim's cell pinged right through to their device. That single, graphic visual removed all doubt, giving the tactical units a chilling preview of the hellscape waiting behind those doors. Law enforcement started with standard procedure, banging on the front entrance, but the house remained dead silent. Armed with the frantic dispatch notes and the photographic proof of a fresh corpse, the squad bypassed protocol and prepared to forcefully breach the main entry to locate survivors. Right as the battering ram was readied, the automatic garage door groaned open, revealing the killer stepping out from the shadows. He instantly challenged the perimeter line, radiating hostility, which prompted officers to utilize hard physical control measures to take him down. The scuffle grew so intense that the Indiana State Police had to rush in, recognizing the extreme volatility of the suspect and providing crucial tactical muscle. With the husband locked in cuffs, the entry team pushed inside, walking straight into a genuine house of horrors. They discovered the young mother discarded on the master bedroom floor, the sheer overkill of her final moments evident everywhere. The massive pooling of blood and structural chaos told a grim, silent story of absolute terror and merciless slaughter. Forensics units soon swarmed the property, locking down the Meyer residence to carefully document the atrocity. Technicians scoured the property inch by inch, piecing together the forensic puzzle of how a quiet suburban night morphed into absolute carnage. Detectives meticulously cataloged the macabre scene, capturing grim imagery and securing trace elements destined to anchor the state's impending case. Every forensic detail wove a chilling, undeniable narrative regarding the savage attack that ultimately ended Deborah's existence, analyzing crimson spray patterns, assessing her final resting posture, alongside the lethal instrument, offering investigators a cold glimpse into the precise choreography of the slaughter. These silent physical markers would eventually align perfectly with Taylor's own dark admissions regarding that fatal evening. Inside a sterile interrogation room, detectives pressed Taylor regarding his spouse's demise. Throughout these recorded sessions, captured starkly on lens, he mapped out his exact movements and dark rationalizations during the hours surrounding Deborah's final breath, his eager admissions and clinical detailing of the butchery underscoring a severe, profound detachment from everyday reality. Once the interrogation concluded and preliminary facts aligned, authorities officially booked Taylor, striking him with homicide charges. Deputies transferred him to the Clark County Detention Center, locking him away without bail, given the absolute severity of his alleged crimes. Keeping him securely behind bars served as a stark judicial acknowledgement of the profound threat he represented to society. Then, on March 18, 2025, Taylor Meyer stood before a judge, formally denying the homicide accusations. His courtroom reckoning is slated for July 15, 2025, where he confronts the grim prospect of permanent incarceration, facing a lifetime behind bars for the savage slaughter of his wife. Gemini de Noy. The tragedy of Deborah North and Taylor Meyer is more than a headline. It is a profound lesson hidden behind the broken glass of a suburban dream. We often mistake a picturesque facade for a peaceful sanctuary, forgetting that the most devastating storms often brew behind closed doors. Deborah was a healer, a woman who dedicated her life to mending others, yet she fell victim to a love that mutated into a cage. Her story teaches us a painful truth. Obsession is not passion, and control is never a substitute for commitment. Love does not demand digital surveillance, nor does it thrive on the toxic soil of paranoia. When I love you morphs into I own you, the foundation of a home is already lost. We must learn to look past the filtered family portraits and listen to the silence that screams. Domestic violence doesn't care about your professional accolades or your social standing. It is a silent thief of futures and a destroyer of childhood innocence. Let Deborah's stolen light be a reminder to speak up, to step in, and to value safety over the illusion of stability. We must vow that no child should ever wake up to a world where their hero has become a ghost. Break the silence, because the truth shouldn't only come to light after the heartbeat stops.